One of the things I finally came to understand about the Egyptian language is that there are two different functions happening with words in the language that reveal more truth to the person who's trying to understand it. The first function is what you can call homonyms, words that sound alike, and what a lot of Egyptologists look at as puns, that only a portion of the full meaning of what you're looking for is in any one of those given words. You might see it as an aspect of a god or an aspect of an idea, but you need to look at the other words that are pronounced the same way in order to come up with the truth. The word for clay is one that originally I thought clay was just a placeholder for the actual word they wanted to use, and you had to go to the words that sounded like clay to find chromosomes and spindles. Man was supposedly formed from clay. Man was really formed from chromosomes and spindles. But as it turns out, clay actually has a scientific role in the process, or may have a scientific role in the process of the creation of life. It's the substance. Certain clays are a substance that act as a catalyst for the formation of the building blocks of life. And so it wasn't just a flat-out placeholder, it was really an important piece of the concept. And sometimes there are multiple words pronounced different ways for the same concept. Like the Egyptian word thread, there are multiple words pronounced different ways that mean thread. If you look at all of the spellings, the hieroglyphic spellings of these words, you come up with clues that need to be put together to get the full picture of what they're talking about when they say thread. And on one level, that's string theory, components of string theory, and diagrams from string theory. On the other level, it's components of reproduction and genetics. Two main cult centers, or two main religious centers in Egypt, Hermopolis and Heliopolis. Heliopolis, the symbolism is all connected to structure of matter. Hermopolis, it's all connected to reproduction and genetics. So when you're talking about serpents and frogs, that immediately makes me think that we're on the human reproduction side, the genetic reproduction side, rather than the structure of matter side. But since the same symbolism is used to represent both, when you come down the genetic reproduction side, you start out with the self-emergent God. The God who emerged from the waters of chaos is the first cell, first living cell, which then produces the perfect pair, which represents mitosis, the splitting of an atom, or of a cell. You get into talking about the serpents and the frogs, and now you're into the details of what's called meiosis, which is sexual reproduction, which is a more complicated subject. And then you start getting into either pairs of males and pairs of females being formed, or 4 males and 4 females being formed, which is the description of this special reproductive process called meiosis, which results in 4 male cells and 4 female cells, each with half the number of chromosomes that you would find in an unusual cell. They then combine to form the zygote, which is what then develops into the human being. So in each of these cultures, part of the duality of the way the religion is set up is because one, I think, is devoted to the structure of matter line, and one is devoted to the genetic reproduction. In that final storyline, the acquisition of the skills of civilization, the symbols are not being used symbolically, they're being used as mnemonic devices. They're being used as ways of helping people remember what it is they're talking about. And they evolved into the graven images that were later forbidden at the time that Judaism and Christianity came out. The forbidding of those graven images is what I think undermined the structure of the serpent religion, which is why it fell apart after the time of the Exodus from Egypt. From what I can see, in many different cultures around the world, serpents are originally knowledgeable teachers. You even see it in the story of Adam and Eve. The transgression that the serpent made was providing knowledge. And you see the same theme repeated again and again in culture, from culture to culture, of the serpent as a provider of knowledge who later becomes vilified and is either said to be forced to leave or is said to choose to leave at a particular point in time. But it also may be discussing the fact that whoever these teachers were came out of a group of teachers, a larger group of teachers, and they were not supposed to have provided us with certain sets of information that they did. And when it was discovered that they had, then the others of the group became very upset and tried to make sure that that got reversed.
Temple's book was something of a bestseller in its day. He drew the conclusion that because the Dogon claimed that they came from the star Sirius, that in fact, literally and physically, the ancient astronauts brought humanity to the Earth in one form or another. But this is, without going into an argument here, this is only one of the possibilities. The fact is that the Dogons, that Sirius worship was a major factor in the Dogon cosmology. Scranton found that interesting, but his interest was in the cosmology himself.
From my point of view, part of what created the tangled knot of information out of Robert Temple's book. Robert Temple's book made some statements that scientists came back and then refuted, and what you're left with is a tangle of information that, depending on the point of view you look at it, you might want to believe, you might not want to believe. Part of what contributed to that was the choice to carry his description to the teachers rather than just limiting it to what was taught. And so in order to stay out of that tangled knot, in order not to have my observations lumped into that knot, I've deliberately chosen not to talk about teachers. And I've been trying, in all aspects of the book, not to go beyond what I could actually demonstrate in black and white. When you get to the question of the teachers, right now we aren't in a position to demonstrate anything in black and white. We can't say for sure it was somebody off planet. We can't say for sure it was somebody from Atlantis. We can't say for sure much of anything. We can't even say for sure that this culture came out of that culture. I mean, there have been many attempts to say it all started in India, or it all started in Mesopotamia, or it all started someplace in China or someplace else. Right now, there are no clear genealogies that don't result in contradictions that say it started here and moved to there. And that all leads me to believe that what we're looking at may actually be deliberate separate presentations of a single lesson plan, but tailored to the regional requirements of each group. So you end up with a serpent symbol that is a cobra in Egypt, but is a rattlesnake in North America. Or you end up with a horned animal symbol that is a ram in one culture and a goat in another culture. All the same underlying symbol, but presented in a way that your average person in a particular region would walk out the door of their hut and see a tangible example of it in front of them that would help self-reinforce the teaching of the religion. And if someone put a gun to my head right now and said, what happened, I would say, someone with knowledge arrived around 3400 BC from wherever and deliberately presented a lesson plan in these different regions: South America, Egypt, Africa, India, China, and so forth.